Hey, this is a video about Touch Designer and the Arduino. Basically, how can we have maybe some sensors connected to an Arduino and get that information into Touch Designer where we can do something with it on screen or on a projector or through speakers. Um, Also, maybe the other way. So if we have an interface in Touch Designer that allows people to interact on screen, how can we have that affect some physical things like make a motor go or change lighting? So all that happens through the serial port, through the USB cable, and that's what I'm going to show in Touch Designer. I'll kind of give some basic information as I'm going about how we interact with Touch Designer, but this isn't just like a basic Touch Designer tutorial. So the first thing I'm going to do is I just opened a new project and it comes up with this network. This is what we call a program in Touch Designer, or a sketch in other environments. We call it a network here. So what we can do is select all these operators with Control A and then just hit backspace to get rid of them. And before I even get to Touch Designer, let me make an Arduino program. So again, we call these sketches in Arduino, but the idea is like, can we just have like a real basic send some sensor data to the serial port? And I think the way I have it set up is I have a, where is it? I have a potentiometer. The wiper of a potentiometer is connected to pin A0. Wiper of potentiometer is on A0, and then the other legs go to VCC and ground. So that should be enough. If I turn the knob, I'll get to be able to read something on A0, an analog voltage. So let's do that. Let's first set up let's set up a variable that tells which pin it's on. So I'll call it pot pin, and that's A0. And then I will make this a bit bigger. Then I will have just something that's like a way to keep track of the value that we're getting. So it starts at 0. It's fine. Then to be able to use the serial port, I have to do serial begin and then the baud rate. As long as the baud rate matches whatever is happening in, or whatever is set to, whatever baud rate is set in Touch Designer, then they'll be able to communicate. In the loop, which is what's happening over and over again, we just basically want to be able to read that value using analog read from pot pin. And because that is a 10-bit number that comes back, it's a 10-bit ADC, or analog to digital converter, on the Arduino. So that means it's going to be a number between 0 and 1023. I'd like this to be a number between 0 and 255, just a byte of information. It's going to make this a lot easier. So I will just divide it by 4, and that means it'll be a number between, pot val will be 0 to 255. And then I'm just going to write that out to the serial port. Now, you will see sometimes print, serial print. And what this is doing is, if I put in a number here, it's actually going to send, if the number was 222, it's going to send 3 letters or characters over the serial port, 222. So it's 3 bytes of information for a 3-digit number. That's not really that efficient, because we know that we can send in a byte any number between 0 and 255. So instead of printing it as characters over the serial port, if we do write, it'll actually send this as a single byte, which is a number between 0 and 255. The other thing is, if we send it using print as a string of 222, string of 3 characters, then we need some way on the other end to know when we're done, right? Like, is that 222 or is that a 22 and followed by a 2? So it would just be one big long string of characters. So then we would need an additional byte to be able to separate them, maybe a comma or a new line or something. So this is much more efficient if we're just sending a single byte of information, and that's all we're doing here. So I'll do a little bit of a delay, so it's not sending it super fast, but it's basically going to wait 1/100th of a second and then do the same thing over and over and over. So let's make sure this is what's on here. Okay, done compiling. It's done uploading. So let's get rid of this. Okay, so I assume this is going to work, and if I wanted to see it working, well, I can't see yet, but if I think if I look in the, let's look in the Arduino serial monitor, because I think it may show something. Yeah, it's showing something, but it's not useful because the Arduino serial monitor is really made for showing characters. I don't think there's a way to get it to show the actual bytes that are getting sent over. So that doesn't help. Okay, but in Touch Designer, we can read the bytes that are coming in. How do we do that? First, to create an operator, we can either double click or hit tab. I hit tab, and these are the different categories of operators. If you remember, comp has some useful things about 3D and interface elements like sliders and buttons. Top is basically anything having to do with graphics on screen. So I think all of these use the GPU. So this is where your graphics card will come in handy. And so, yeah, we'll get back to that. But chop is anything having to do with kind of like streaming data. So things like audio or MIDI information coming in, or being able to kind of change the flow of data using channels. That's called channel operators. Top is for texture operators. SOP is anything having to do with 3D. So this is how we create 3D objects. And then MAT is applying materials to those three objects. So we're not using either of those in this tutorial. And then DAD is anything that's like kind of data, like text data maybe would be in there, or tables of information, what else? Scripts, or actually, or serial data, right? So we're actually going to find the serial operator that we want. Now, there is a channel operator, or chop, that is serial. So there's a serial chop. That's not what we're using. We're using the serial DAT. So I'm going to click serial and add it here. And what this looks like is there's a little purple button here that can hide the text box that's connected with this. But if we look in here, this actually shows us that when a message comes in on the serial port, it's going to call this onReceive Python function, which then will run whatever's in here. And there's some parameters that come into the function that are useful, and it describes them here. So byte data will be particularly useful for us because it's actually like the information that's coming in byte after byte. So let's see, what is this warning? It says could not connect to the device. So there is no port right now, and what we'll want to do is connect this to the Arduino port. And I think probably there's already some data coming in. Yeah, 100 bytes pending. So it says, please ensure row callback format parameter set to 1 per byte. So let's, because the bytes are just streaming in with no way to tell them apart, we want to make sure that this is not reading in the data by line, but instead by byte by byte. And so immediately we see stuff streaming here. Again, it's not useful information. It's the same as the Arduino. But what we could do is let's see if we can get this to show up over here in a different operator. For that, we can use a text DAT. So here's a text DAT, and I just want to see the number show up in here. So this will be useful. Now, the first thing is, what are we doing with this number? We're not doing anything with it right now. It's just showing up here in this table of information in the serial operator. So what I can do here is click Viewer Active on this script and actually make changes to it. And what I'd like to do is set the and by the way, I know several programming languages very well. I don't know Python, but that's okay because basically we need to know enough Python that we can work within Touch Designer. We don't need to be Python experts. So this is very Touch Designer specific. The way that you address another operator is by just this op function. And there's text1 right there is the operator that we want to deal with. We want to change what's in here. Now, I don't actually know how to set the text that's in here to something. I want to set it to whatever's coming in on the serial port. So the best thing to do is just click on this, and then you see this little Python help button. So there's help and there's Python help. So if I click Python help, let's see if I can bring that over to this screen. It tells me everything I can do with this kind of operator in Python. So it says right here, there's a text member. It's get or set contents. So let's see if let's just say we say dot text, and let's just set it to like A. Okay, I don't know. I think that should work. So what that's going to do probably is, I think probably just put an A there every time some information comes in. That's what it's doing. So, or we can change that to AH, then if I click over here, now every time it's coming in, it's just putting AH there. Okay, that's not useful though. What we really want is the data that's coming in. So we've got this byte data parameter that's coming in. Let's see what that does. So this is not useful. It's showing it as a byte, you know, like kind of encoded. What I'd like to do is convert it to a number. And, you know, like I said, I'm not a Python expert. So maybe what I'll do is just Google how to convert a byte to an integer in Python. I found this before, so here we go. So this is what it's looking like right now, right? And here this says there's a built-in function for this. It's int.fromBytes, and then you put the bytes. So we can look at the examples here. You put whatever byte information there is. We know we've already got that in a variable here, byte data. And then I guess you have to put big here. And I'm not going to explain that part, but basically it's what's the order of the byte of the bits in this byte. So I think big is going to work. So we're going to put byte data here. So we're passing byte data and this string of big to this function called from bytes, and int is just kind of like there's a collection. Well, I don't know if, yeah, let's just copy and paste because we're not trying to become Python experts. And in fact, this is a thing that we could probably ask ChatGPT for as well. So how do we convert an integer from just a byte to, how do we convert a byte or bytes to an integer? And that's what we want to show up in this text field. So let's see if that works. There it is. It's 214. If I turn the knob, I have the Arduino right here. If I turn the knob, it goes all the way up to 250. And then as I turn it down, or to the right in my case, it's going to 0. So if the numbers are going the opposite way that you would expect with the knob, then you can switch the positive and negative on the potentiometer and it'll go the other way. Okay, let's say we want to use this to like rotate an image. Well, if I double click again and add remember top has anything to have to do with images, there's a movie file in top. And whether you're talking about an image or a movie, it's the same operator, movie file in. So they give you a banana just to start with if you don't have any image, and that works for us. And then if we right click on an output, that will tack on an operator to the end of this one. So what we could do is choose out here, and that's going to be the output of our network. And then it's always a good practice to have a null top as kind of a way to close it off. So that's the end right there. And actually, if I hit this blue dot here, it'll display it in the background, or I can display it in a different window. But for now, this will work. So what I want to do is be able to rotate this thing. So maybe I'll just move these over, and in the middle here, I can add an operator on a cable by just right-clicking and choosing Insert Operator. And again, under top, because I'm dealing with images, there's something called transform, and that allows me to do things like scale and rotate and so on. So to change numbers here, I just hover over it and hold down the scroll wheel and then go left and right. And I can also hold it down and then go up or down to be able to change it by a smaller or larger increment. And that's how changing all these numbers works. Now, let's say it's just like totally wrong. That's a wrong banana. One thing I can do is look here with the target and see anything that is not a default. So that's not a default. That's useful. And then you can also just right click and say, how do you do it? I think well, you can reset this one. No, how do you reset everything? Well, we can reset a parameter, but I know there's a way to reset them all too. But you can also just go here and see which ones are changed and reset them individually. So there's also a rotate here. Now, again, you can either hold down the middle button and change this using the side-to-side motion, or you can use the the slider that they give you. But it's worth knowing that you can put in other numbers. So even though the slider only goes up to 360, you could actually put like 5,000 here, and it will rotate it 5,000 degrees. And then again, the slider will just go, well, it goes from negative 360 to 360. Okay, so what we want to do is get our number here to control this parameter. And the way we do that is we click on whatever it is, and actually the text, I guess we want the text box. Yeah. So what we can do is turn on this viewer active button in the lower right. That allows us to drag this. So I'm going to drag this over. Okay. Now it's not giving me the option to drag this over. And I think that's because this is a chop, and we want to convert this to a top. So, sorry, to a chop. Okay. This is a, let's look, because this is purple, right? So let's figure out what this is. If I hit tab, it's a DAT right now because that's the same purple color. What I want is for it to be a chop because this needs to be channel information to be able to control another parameter. So one thing I can do is right click here at the end, and I think we can convert this to a chop by choosing the chop operators here. And you'll notice the list is smaller, and that's because I right clicked on the output. It's only showing me ones that are relevant. So DAT2 is a DAT to chop. And if you look on the bottom, it gives you some information about this one. It says DAT to chop. So it'll create a set of chop channels with values derived from a DAT. So let me click that. And now I've got an actual number. So if I turn this, I'm seeing there's a channel 0 with a value associated with it. So now we can use this. This is more useful for us in most cases than just having this DAT text that's showing up here, or this kind of text box thing. So let's also, I think there are ways to change how this looks. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. I put single channel here for output, and I put first column is values. So now when I turn this, I can actually see it as kind of like a visual. Now I can take this number, and if I again turn on viewer active, I can drag this over my transform operator and hold it there, and then find whatever operator I'm trying to connect it with. So rotate seems like the one. I will let go and choose chop reference. And now the channel operator is controlling that parameter. So there we go. Now, let me tell you something else here. I'm going to undo that, Control Z. Okay, so it's not connected anymore. And again, having these having null operators is a good practice, because let's say I didn't like the values that were coming out of there. I have to do a lot of like rewiring if I want to change the way this value looks. I'd like it to go from 0 to 360. So it's and it's not that, it's 0 to 255 right now. So I'd have to disconnect things and then adjust that range of that number and so on. So what I really want to do, I'm going to turn off viewer active, and I'm going to add a null chop to this, and that is the thing that will connect to my parameter. That way, if I want to add anything in between here, like resizing or scaling of the number, I can do that without interrupting the rest of the wiring. So let's do that. I'm going to again turn on viewer active, drag this over transform, and then drop it on rotate and choose chop reference. So again, it's working, but I'd like this number to go from 0 to 360, or maybe negative 360 to 360. So let me right click on this and insert an operator in between, and there's a math chop that I can use to resize or scale that number. So let's change the range of that number. Over here, I can click on this math chop. I've got range. It normally goes from 0 to 1, but actually this one goes from 0 to 255, and I want the range to be negative 360 to 360. Okay, so let's turn the knob now, and we've got a much better rotation. Okay, whatever. I was going to go a lot further with this, you know, like making it change other things, like maybe fade between images, and there's a lot more we can do. But you know, once we have a channel that has the number coming in, there's a lot of possibilities. Now, also, If let's say I wanted this number, you can see that in scaling it, the number has become a decimal number, which is not a problem for rotation. But if you're like, actually, I still want it to be an integer, if I click on the math chop again, I think there's an option here for integer. You can say I want to round the numbers or change them to be floor or ceiling, meaning rounding up or down. So I choose floor. Now you can see it's again a whole number instead of a decimal number. Okay, so that's all getting information from the Arduino. Now, what if I want to get information to the Arduino? Let's say, for example, let's make this easy. I'm gonna add an operator, and I'm gonna add a comp. I'm gonna add a slider here. And what I'd like is for the slider to control the brightness of an LED. So what you'll have to do is connect an LED to one of the pins that has analog output or PWM output. So if you look on the Arduino, there's a little tilde next to the number of those pins. And so I've got mine connected to pin 11. And of course you need a resistor to go with the LED. Let's look at an Arduino example that can be uploaded to the board to make this work. Okay, so this is our old one where we just wrote it from scratch. This is sending the potentiometer values. Now we could make this, add features to this so that it can receive data, but let's just start from something simple because there's already an example that does this. If we go under examples, communication, dimmer, this actually takes serial data in and dims the LED. That's exactly what we want. So let's take a look at this. There's an LED pin, but actually mine is on pin 11. And then it starts the serial communication with 9600 baud. It makes the LED pin an output. And then there's a byte or a 0 for 255 value. That's what's going to be stored in this variable called brightness. It reads in a byte from the serial port and puts it in that variable and then uses that to say how bright the LED is going to be. So again, this is a value between 0 and 255. So that's it. That's the whole program. I think that'll work fine. If I hit upload, we're going to see a problem. It says it couldn't upload. Now that's because it says COM5 access is denied. Now if we go over here, this serial port is being used. So let's just temporarily change it to something else. And then when we go back over and try and upload again, it should work. Okay, so we've got a different program on here now, and now my LED is not doing anything. Let's see if we can make this actually write the information from the slider to the serial port. Okay, so I've got my slider, and the first thing is, I'm assuming this isn't a number between 0 and 255. I don't know what it is. Let me turn off viewer active and add a null chop to this. And I should be able to see the number. So let's viewer active again so that I can control this. And it looks like it goes from 0 to 1, which is pretty typical for things in Touch Designer. So the first thing is I want to probably move this over and scale that to a number between 0 and 255. So I'll insert an operator on that cable, and there's a math operator like before. It goes now from 0 to 1, and I want it to go from 0 to 255. So now if I turn on viewer active, I see that it goes from 0 to 255. Now this is where, because we don't want a decimal number going to the Arduino, this is where making sure that it's actually an integer will be useful. So I'm going to say floor, and that way when it goes all the way to the end, it's 255, all the way to the other end, it's 0, instead of having a decimal number there. Okay, so this looks pretty good. And then I think this is, because this is a channel operator, a chop, this is a channel that I'm interested in using. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose channel. Oh, okay. It's not under, okay, because, so in DAT, the DAT operators, I said that it has to do with text and tables of information, also has to do with scripting. So because we want to execute a script, it's under DAT. So chop execute will connect right here, this chop to a script. So let's look at what's in here. If I just resize this a bit, there are other ways to edit this that aren't so annoying, but these are very small scripts. So I'm just going to resize like this. So is that everything? Yeah. So basically, anything that happens with the chop can execute one of these functions. And the one that we're interested in is this on value change. So if the value of the chop changes, we want to send that to the serial port. And we already have this serial 1 over here. It's got a warning because it's not connected to the serial port. Let's try switching it back to 5. And then over here, we're going to edit this by clicking viewer active, and we're going to add something for it to do when a value comes in from the chop. So what we can do is address our serial operator. So this is the same as before. We just do, there's our serial operator. And what do we want to do? We want to get it to send some information. So again, like I think if we click on serial and choose the Python help, because this is what we're in Python right now. We're trying to find out what we can do in Python. So here's the serial.class. class. If we look down, there's a send, which will send a sequence of strings. So this gets back to like, we don't want to send a number 125 as 1 followed by 2 followed by 5. We want to send a single byte. So I think send bytes is what we want. And it looks like you just do send bytes with the number. Let's see if that works. So send bytes, and then the number. Now, what is the number? Well, there are several things that come in here. The channel, the sample index, the value seems like the one we want, right? So let's see if this will work. I'm going to click somewhere else. I think that's how you get it to recognize that something has happened here. I don't know. Let's just try it. So I'm going to change the slider here. And it's working. So I mean, you have to take my word for it. But as I go to the left, the LED gets dimmer. As I go to the right, it gets brighter. Now, this is not halfway bright just because of the way LEDs work. Halfway seems like it's more about here. So we'd have to decide how we can deal with that. We're in a computer program here. We can do things like, instead of changing it in a linear way, we could probably get the slider to have more of like an exponential curve to it. But I'm not going to do that here. This is all working. We've gotten information from the Arduino to affect some visuals on screen, and we've gotten this slider to affect the LED going the other direction. Okay, hopefully that helps. There's a lot more to learn in this, especially if you want to send other kinds of information, if you want an Arduino program that does both. But hopefully this gets you started. Good luck.